trend of the northern kingdom. He continued Jeroboam's idolatry. In fact, he kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah and came to do worse than all who were prior to him. 1 Kings 16. 25, 26. Some 200 years later, through Micah, Jehovah condemned Israel for following the statutes of Omri. Micah 6. 16. 4. A Judite whose descendant lived in Jerusalem following the Babylonian exile. 1 Ch 9. 3, 4. On. The name of a person and a place. 1. Generative power. Dynamic energy. A son of Peleth. A principal man of the tribe of Reuben. New 16. When he was among those raising a protest against Moses and Aaron, but his name does not appear among the rebels in their later speeches to Moses or when they were punished by Jehovah with destruction. New 16. 2, 3, 12-14, 23-35. This may be due to his playing a very textually acute Muritra Longo. Onesimus 555. In course of time the priesthood of On became very wealthy, rivaling the priesthood of Memphis in this respect, and being surpassed only by the priesthood of Thebes. Biblical No Amen. Connected with its temple to the sun, the school was operated for training priests and for the teaching of medicine. Greek philosophers and scholars were drawn there to learn the priestly theology, and On became celebrated as a center of Egyptian wisdom. The prophet Jeremiah was inspired to foretell that King Nebuchadnezzar would overrun Egypt and break to pieces the pillars of Beth Shemesh, which is in the land of Egypt. Jah 43. 10-13. Beth Shemesh corresponds somewhat to the Greek name Heliopolis and means house of the sun. Hence the reference here is likely to the city of On, and the pillars that were to be broken may well refer to the many obelisks around the temple of the sun. Ezekiel's prophecy contains a similar warning. Es 30. 10, 17. Here the Hebrew vowel pointing of the name varies from that of Genesis so that the name literally is Aven-Heb. Awen. Some scholars suggest that it was done as a play on words, since Aven means hurtfulness. Something hurtful, and On was a center of idolatry. This may also be the case at Isaiah 19. 18, where the Masoretic text refers to one of the 5 cities in the land of Egypt speaking the language of Canaan and swearing to Jehovah as the city of tearing down Heb. Iha-Herez. The Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah has Iha-Cherez, meaning city of the sun, thus pointing to On Heliopolis. Here again there may be an intentional play on words, Herez tearing down being substituted for Cherez, another Hebrew word for sun, less common than Shemesh in view of Jehovah's intention to destroy the idolatrous city of On. The paraphrase of this portion of the verse found in the Aramaic Targums reads, City of the house of the sun, which is to be destroyed. Besides the foretold destructive invasion by Nebuchadnezzar, On Heliopolis evidently suffered a further blow when Cambyses II conquered Egypt according to Strabo, Greek geographer who lived near the start of the Common Era. Geography, 17, I, 27. By Strabo's time Heliopolis had lost its position of importance and was partially deserted. Today, the village called Almatari occupies part of the ancient site, and all that remains there of the earlier splendor is a single obelisk of red granite dating from the reign of Sesostris. Other obelisks from Heliopolis are now to be found in New York, London, and Rome. Onmonam from a root meaning generative power. Dynamic energy. 1. Last of the 5 listed sons of Horite Sheikh Shobal, and grandson of the Horite's forefather Ser. GE 36. 20, 21, 23. 1 Ch 1. 40. 2. A son of Jerahmeel and a link in the Jerahmeelite genealogy in the tribe of Judah. His mother's name was Atara. 1 Ch 2. 26, 28. Onan from a root meaning generative power. Dynamic energy. A son of Judah, his second by the Canaanite daughter of Shur. GE 38. 2-4. 1 Ch 2. 3. After Onan's childless older brother who was put to death by Jehovah for wrongdoing, Onan was told by Judah to perform brother-in-law marriage with his widow Tamar. If a son was produced, he would not be the founder of Onan's family, and the firstborn's inheritance would belong to him as an heir to. Whereas if no heir came, Onan would get the inheritance for himself. When Onan had relations with Tamar, he wasted his semen on the earth instead of giving it to her. This was not an act of masturbation on the part of Onan, for the account says when he did have relations with his brother's wife he spilled his semen. Apparently it was a case of coitus interruptus, in which Onan purposely prevented ejaculation of his semen into Tammuz's genital tract. For his disobedience to his father, his covetousness, and his sin against the divine arrangement of marriage, not for self-abuse, o textui acute miritra longo, Onesiphorus 556 reluctance in view of how good a companion he has become. The apostle, however, had no way of forcing Onesimus to make the return, so it depended on and resulted from Onesimus' own willingness to go. In dispatching Onesimus, Paul arranged for Tychicus to accompany him and for the two to carry a letter and a report to Colossae. Col 4. 7-9 Additionally, Paul gave Onesimus his letter to Philemon, even though it was late enough in his imprisonment that Paul was expecting release and looking forward to visiting Philemon personally. PHM 22 This latter letter might be termed one of reintroduction and recommendation for Onesimus, in which Paul assured Philemon of the good Christian ministry and new personality of Onesimus, and in which he pleaded that the reunion be more like that of two Christians than that of a slave and his master. Paul asked that any outstanding debt that Onesimus owed Philemon be charged to the apostle's account. PHM 12-22 Incidentally, in the letter to the Colossians that Onesimus and Tychicus were carrying, Paul dealt with the Christian principles governing the relationship of slave and master. Col 3. 22. 4. 1. Onesiphorus on middle.e middle.sippo middle.rus prophet bearer. A Christian referred to in Paul's second letter to Timothy. 2t4. 19 In contrast with others in the district of Asia who turned away from Paul, Onesiphorus remained a loyal supporter and, when in Rome, diligently hunted to find Paul in spite of the risk to himself. He was not ashamed of Paul's prison bonds, but rendered the apostle good service, as he had done in Ephesus. Paul greatly appreciated his loyalty and prayed that Onesiphorus and his household would receive of Jehovah's mercy. 2t1. 15-18. The fact that Paul sent greetings to the household of Onesiphorus rather than to Onesiphorus himself 2t4. 19 does not necessarily indicate that he was no longer alive, though such might be true. He may simply have been away from his family at the time, or may even be included in the general greeting sent to his household of believers. Onion Heb. Ba middle.zel. A strong-tasting bulbous biennial having slender tuber-like leaves. The onion alimspa was one of the items of diet for which the mixed crowd and the Israelites yearned in the wilderness after being liberated from Egypt. New 11. 4, 5 In that land of Israel's captivity, onions were extensively cultivated. The Greek historian Herodotus 2:125 even tells of an inscription that listed onions among the foods provided for the laborers on a certain Egyptian pyramid. In Egypt, onions, usually tied together in a bundle, were offered to the deities, although the priests were not permitted to eat them. The onions of Egypt have been described as soft, and therefore more easily digestible than other varieties, as well as sweet-tasting rather than sharp, or acrid. Only begotten. The Greek word genes is defined by lexicographers as single of its kind, only, or the only member of a kin or kind. Thayer's Greek-English Lexicon of the New Testament, 1889, p. 417. Liddell and Scott's Greek-English Lexicon, Oxford, 1968, p. 1144 The term is used in describing the relation of both sons and daughters to their parents. The scriptures speak of the only begotten son of a widow who lived in the city of Nain, of Jairus' only begotten daughter, and of a man's only begotten son whom Jesus cured of a demon. Luke 7. 11, 12. 8. 41, 42. 9. 38 The Greek Septuagint uses mo-ge-nes when speaking of Jephthah's daughter, concerning whom it is written. Now she was absolutely the only child. Besides her he had neither son nor daughter. JG 11. 34. The Apostle John repeatedly describes the Lord Jesus Christ as the only begotten Son of God. Joe 1. 14. 3. 16, 18. 1 Joe 4. 9 This is not in reference to his human birth or to him as just the man Jesus. As the Logos, or word. This one was in the beginning with God, even before the world was. Jo 1. O texto e acute muritra longo. Ophel 557 properly described as the only begotten God gr. Mo middle dot no middle dot ge middle dot nesta middle dot os. Jo 1. 18. NW, Ro, SP. A few translations, in support of the Trinitarian God the Son concept, would invert the phrase mo middle dot no middle dot ge middle dot nesta middle dot os and render it as God only begotten. But W. J. Hickey in his Greek-English Lexicon to the New Testament 1956, p. 123 says it is hard to see why these translators render mo middle dot no middle dot genes hu middle dot os as the only begotten Son, but at the same time translate mo middle dot no middle dot ge middle dot nesta middle dot os as God only begotten, instead of the only begotten God. Paul referred to Isaac as Abraham's only begotten son. Heb 11. 17. Even though Abraham also fathered Ishmael by Hagar as well as several sons by Keturah. Ge 16. 15. 25. 1, 2. 1 ch 1. 28, 32 God's covenant, however, was established only through Isaac, Abraham's only son by God's promise, as well as the only son of Sarah. Ge 17. 16-19 Furthermore, at the time Abraham offered up Isaac, he was the only son in his father's household. No sons had yet been born to Keturah, and Ishmael had been gone for some 20 years. No doubt was married and head of his own household. Ge 22. 2. So from several viewpoints in regard to the promise and the covenant, the things about which Paul was writing to the Hebrews, Isaac was Abraham's only begotten son. Hence, Paul parallels the promises and the only begotten son with your seed through Isaac. Heb 11. 17, 18 Whether Josephus had a similar viewpoint or not, he too spoke of Isaac as Abraham's only son. Jewish Antiquities, I, 222-13, 1. Oh no. A city built evidently by the Benjamite Shemd, son of Elpal. 1 ch 8. 1, 12 After the Babylonian exile Ono was reoccupied by Benjamites. As 2. 1, 33. Ne 7. 6, 37. 11. 31, 35 Kafran Ono, about 11 kilometers 7 miles of Joppa, is identified with the ancient site. This location is just a few kilometers from the suggested sites of ancient Lod and Hadad. The valley plain of Ono Ne 6. 2 possibly denotes the wide valley in which Kafran lies. This valley plain has also been associated with the valley of the craftsman Gehakara Shim. Ne 11. 35 But some scholars understand the Hebrew Geha Shim to designate another location and transliterate it as a proper name, Harashim. JP. Compare 1 ch 4. 14. 1 Ikaron Y char. An ingredient of the incense designated exclusively for sanctuary use. X30. 34-37 Some believe that onika may have been derived from the closing valves of certain shellfish. However, since this ingredient was used for a sacred purpose, others consider it to have been a vegetable product instead of something obtained from an unclean animal. Onyx. A semi-precious gemstone, a hard variety of agate. The term also applies to a banded form of chalcedony. The onyx has white layers alternating with black, brown, red, gray, or green. The pale color produced by the combination of the red layers showing through the translucent white layers of this stone evidently reminded the Greeks of the fingernail, which in Greek is onyx. From early times, onyx has been prized for ornaments, rings, and beads. The varicolored layers made it especially popular for cameo work. The land of Havilah was a prominent source of onyx in early Bible times. Ge 2. 11, 12 Onyx stones were among the valuables contributed for the making of things associated with Israel's tabernacle. X 25. 1-3, 7 The names of the sons of Israel, in the order of their births, were engraved upon 2 onyx stones, 6 names on each stone placed upon the shoulder pieces of the high priest's ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel. Another onyx stone was engraved with the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel and was set in the center position of the fourth row of stones on the high priest's breastpiece of judgment. X28. 9-12, 15-21. 35. 5, 9, 27. 39. 6-14. Later, David personally prepared many valuable things, including Otextoi acute Muritra Longo. Ophir 558. Ophir evidently was the bulge of land extending eastwardly from this corner of Jerusalem's Temple Hill. Ophir's wall and elevated position over the Kidron Valley gave it a strong defensive position. Nevertheless, Isaiah prophesied that Ophir, apparently that of Jerusalem, would become a bare field. Isaiah 32. 14. Compare the reference to the tower in Mount Ophir at Mikfor. 8. Scholars believe that the term Ophir at 2 Kings 5. 24 refers to some prominent hill or fortified place in the vicinity of Samaria to which Elisha's attendant Gehazi took the riches he obtained from Naaman. This indicates that the word was applied to mounds other than the one in Jerusalem. Ophir. 1. A descendant of Shem through Apakshad, Shelah, Eber, and Joktan. The 11th of Joktan's 13 sons. GE 10. 22-29. 1ch1. 17-23. Ophir was probably born about 200 years before Abraham, who was a descendant of his paternal uncle Peleg. GE 10. 25. 11. 18-26. As in the case of his brothers, it appears that Ophir also headed one of the Semite tribes that were numbered among the descendants of Noah according to their families, according to their tongues, in their lands, according to their nations. GE 10. 31, 32. See No. 2 for possible locations of the land of Ophir in which this tribe eventually settled. 2. A place renowned as a source of much gold of the finest quality. Thus already in Job's time c. 1600 BCE precious ore in the dust and pure gold was spoken of in parallel with the gold of Ophir. Job 22. 24. 28. 15, 16. Psalm 45. 9 describes the queenly consort arrayed in precious gold of Ophir, and at Isaiah 13. 11, 12, in the pronouncement against Babylon, the relative rarity of Ophir gold is used to symbolize the scarcity of tyrannical men in Babylon after its fall. David donated 3,000 talents of gold from Ophir for construction of the temple, gold valued at $1,156,050,000. 1ch 29. 1, 2, 4. Later, the trading fleet of David's son Solomon brought back from Ophir 420 talents of gold. 1 Chi 9. 26-28. The parallel account at 2 Chronicles 8. 18 reads 450 talents. Some scholars have suggested that this difference came about when letters of the alphabet served as figures. That an ancient copyist could have mistaken the Hebrew numeral letter Nun, representing 50, for the letter Kaf, standing for 20, or vice versa. However, the evidence is that all numbers in the Hebrew scriptures were spelled out, rather than represented by letters. A more probable explanation, therefore, is that both figures are correct and that the gross amount brought was 450 talents, of which 420 were clear gain. In 1946, as confirmation of these biblical accounts about imports of gold from Ophir, a potsherd was unearthed in of Tel Aviv Yafo. Thereon was an inscription saying Ophir gold to Bet Horon, 30 shekels. Journal of Near Eastern Studies, 1951, Volume X, pages 265, 266. In addition to being a source of a vast quantity of gold, the land of Ophir was also a source of the algum trees and precious stones imported by Solomon. 1 Chi 10. 11. 2 Ch 9. 10. However, when King Jehoshaphat, 100 years later, attempted an expedition to that land, it ended in disaster, his Tarshish ships being wrecked at Ezion-Geber at the head of the Gulf of Aqaba. 1 Chi 22. 48. See Tarshish No. 4. Location. The precise location of Ophir cannot be determined today with certainty. Of the several suggestions in this regard, 3 are particularly favored: India, Arabia, and any Africa. all being within reach of a fleet operating out of Ezion-Geber at the head of the eastern arm of the Red Sea. In regard to India, all the goods brought back in the ships of Solomon and Hiram were available there. Josephus, Jerome, and the Septuagint could also be marshalled to give some support to Ophir's being in India. On the other hand, those maintaining that Ophir was in the region of Eni Africa or in the vicinity of Somalia, O textoi acute miritra longo. Ornaments 559 extended northward near Bethel to include this suggested site of Ophani. Ophrah. 1. Young one of the stags. A descendant of Judah through Meonotai. 1 ch 4. 1, 14. 2, 3. Possibly, place of dust 2. A city of Benjamin. Jos 18. 21, 23. Its relative location may be deduced from the narrative about Israel's encounters with the Philistines during Saul's reign. From their camp at Michmash, bands of Philistine pillagers sallied forth in 3 different directions. One band turned to the road to Ophrah. Another went westward on the road to Beth-horon, while yet another travelled eastward on the road to the boundary that looks toward the valley of Zeboim. Since at least part of the Israelite army was encamped at Geba to the east of Michmash, apparently the Philistine band taking the road to Ophrah went northward. Accordingly, this would place Ophrah to the end of Michmash. 1 13. 16-18. Scholars often equate Ophrah with the city called Ephraim. 2 13. 23. Jo 11. 54 and Ephraim 2 ch 13. 19. Thought to be represented by Tayyiba Sea. 6 kilometers 3.5 million of Bethel. 3. The home of Gideon and the place where Jehovah's angel commissioned him to save Israel out of Midian's palm. JG 6. 11-32. After his victory over the enemy forces, Gideon made an ephod from the contributed spoils and exhibited it at Ophrah. Subsequently this ephod became an object of idolatrous veneration. JG 8. 24-27. Later, after Gideon's death and burial at Ophrah, his ambitious son Abimelech killed his brothers. 70 men, upon 1 stone, but Jotham the youngest was left over. JG 8. 32. 9. 5. Not counting Abimelech, Gideon had 70 sons. JG 8. 30, 31. Therefore, since Jotham escaped the slaughter, apparently Abimelech killed only 69 sons at Ophrah. Jotham's later words concerning the incident merely appear to point to Abimelech's intention to kill all 70 sons. JG 9. 18. However, as the Jewish commentary fittingly observes, it is still correct to speak in round numbers of 70 slain. Cincino Books of the Bible, edited by A. Cohen, London, 1950. Joshua and Judges, p. 234. This Ophrah apparently lay W of the Jordan. It is tentatively identified with Eliphalah, about 45 kilometers 28 million of Shechem. Oreb Raven. 1. A prince of Midian. Oreb and Zeb were in the Midianite army of King Zebron's army and that Gideon and his 300 put to flight. The 2 princes were captured and put to death by men of Ephraim, and their heads were brought to Gideon. JG 7. 24, 25. 8. 3-5. PS 83. 11. 2. The rock where Midianite Prince Oreb was executed in that came to bear his name. Its location is unknown. JG 7. 25. Issa 10. 26. Oranoren, a son of Jerahmeel in the tribe of Judah. 1 ch 2. 25. Orientals or Middle Dotindals. The populace of those lands viewed by Hebrew writers as the east. This area was beyond the boundary of Israel not only to the east but also well up to the northeast and to the southeast into Arabia. GE 25. 6. J 49. 28. Thus, when Jacob went to Laban's household at Haran, he went to the land of the Orientals, any of Canaan. GE 29. 1. Job is called the greatest of all the Orientals, literally, sons of the east. Job 1. 3, ftn The forces that oppressed Israel before Gideon rose up and vanquished them were comprised of Amalekites and Midianites in addition to the Easterners, otherwise unidentified. JG 6. 3, 33. 7. 12. 8. 10. The Orientals, noted for their wisdom, were, however, surpassed in this respect by Solomon. 1 Kai 4. 30. The so-called wise men, or magi, who visited the young child Jesus were astrologers from eastern parts. Mount 2. 1, 2, 11. Ornaments. An adornment, not always essential in itself, but meant to enhance the appearance of something. Ornaments were used especially by women but also by men. They were used to decorate buildings. At times, they were put on animals. Bible references and the evidence unearthed by archaeologists reveal O textoi acute miritra longo. Ornaments 560 chairs, royal chariots, and other items have survived. Hebrew and Christian. Early mention is made of jewelry in the form of a gold nose ring and also bracelets given to Rebekah by Abraham's servant. GE 24. 22, 30, 47, 53 Joseph, upon becoming Pharaoh's prime minister, received a gold necklace and the monarch's own signet ring. GE 41. 41-43 Such signet rings, or seal rings, were common in all the Bible lands, frequently being worn on a cord around the neck. Compare GE 38. 18. They served to affix the signature, or official seal, of the individual to documents and hence, if granted to another person to carry, identified him as a bona fide and authorized representative of the ring's owner. At the Exodus, the Israelites obtained many silver and gold articles from the Egyptians, and doubtless from these came many of the brooches, earrings, rings, and other items they contributed for the preparation of the tabernacle, even as they had wrongly contributed gold earrings for the forming of an idolatrous calf. X 12. 35, 36. 32. 1-4. 35. 20-24 The tabernacle and its equipment saw much work by artisans skilled in woodworking and working with precious metals and gems as well as weaving and embroidery. X 35. 25-35 The later temple by Solomon was even more gloriously adorned. Its cedar wood panels, as well as its doors of oil tree and juniper wood, were carved with such figures as gourd-shaped ornaments, garlands of blossoms, cherubs, and palm tree figures and were overlaid with gold. While the two copper pillars in front of the structure had network, chainwork, pomegranates, and lily work adorning their capitals. 1 Kai 6. 18, 29, 35. 7. 15-22 Solomon showed great appreciation for artistic beauty, and his great ivory throne overlaid with gold, with lion figures alongside each arm and 12 more on the 6 steps before it, was unique in the ancient world. 1 Kai 10. 16-21. The Bible lays greater emphasis, however, on spiritual beauty. Parental discipline is a wreath of attractiveness to one's head and a fine necklace for the throat. Wisdom is a crown of beauty. Lips of knowledge are precious vessels superior to any gold vases of an artisan. As apples of gold in silver carvings is a word spoken at the right time for it, and an earring of gold, and an ornament of special gold, is a wise reprover upon the hearing ear. PR 1. 9. 4. 9. 20. 15. 25. 11. 12 A pretty woman lacking sensibleness is likened to a gold nose ring in the snout of a pig. PR 11. 22. Moderation is encouraged, particularly in the Christian Greek scriptures. Women were to adorn themselves in well-arranged dress, with modesty and soundness of mind, not with styles of hair braiding and gold or pearls or very expensive garb, but in the way that befits women professing to reverence God, namely, through good works. 1 T2. 9, 10 Peter could call upon examples of pre-Christian times in urging that women seek the beauty of the secret person of the heart in the incorruptible apparel of the quiet and mild spirit, which is of great value in the eyes of God. He pointed to women such as Sarah who so adorned themselves, subjecting themselves to their own husbands. 1 P3. 1-6 Thus, if followed, The scriptures provide a guide to a proper evaluation of ornamentation and jewelry and good balance in its use. Ornamentation in prophecy. Because of his blessing upon Jerusalem, Jehovah likened this capital of Judah to a woman clothed with costly garments, richly ornamented and bejeweled. Her loss of spirituality and her spiritual prostitution with the nations led to her being stripped of her adornments and left as if naked. As 16. 2, 10-39 Such stripping came not only in a spiritual way, but also literally as her greedy conquerors took the city's wealth, including the bangles, headbands, moon-shaped ornaments, eardrops, bracelets, veils, headdresses, step chains, breastbands, houses of the soul probably otextoi acute muritra longo. Ostrich represent divine blessing and favor but, rather, her own pretenses and the benefits her harlot-like course pays her in the way of power and wealth. Re 17. 3-5, 16. 18. 7-20. See anklet. Beads. Bracelet. Brooch. Earring. Jewels and precious stones. Necklace. Nose ring. Ring. Ornan. A Jebusite from whom David bought the threshing floor that later became the site for the temple. 1 Ch 21. 18-28. 2 Ch 3. 1 Ornan is also called Orona. See Orona. Orpah. The Moabite wife of Chilion, and like Ruth, a daughter-in-law of Naomi. Compare 1. 3-5 with 4. 10. After the husbands of all three died, the childless widows, Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth, began the journey from Moab to Bethlehem. At a certain point Naomi urged her two daughters-in-law to go back to their mother's homes and marry in Moab, but they both kept saying to Naomi, "No, but with you we shall return to your people." Orpah had dealt kindly with her mother-in-law, for whom she evidently felt considerable affection. Ru 1. 8-10 Her inclination to continue on with Naomi may have been in part the result of having enjoyed life in an Israelite family. But Naomi now stressed the strong probability that for these two Moabite widows to continue with her might mean a life of widowhood in Judah, inasmuch as Naomi had little hope of remarrying so as to bring forth sons, and even should this happen, she was sure that Orpah and Ruth would not want to wait until such sons mature so that they might perform levirate marriage toward these Moabite widows. Orpah's affection and appreciation were not enough to keep her going along in the face of such a possible future, and after much weeping, she bade farewell to Naomi and Ruth and returned to her people and her gods. Ru 1. 3-15. Orphan. See fatherless boy. Osprey Heb. Perez. One of the flying creatures decreed as unclean and not to be eaten, according to the law covenant. La 11. 13. The 14. 12 Its Hebrew name Perez literally means the breaker. Understanding this to refer to the breaking of bones by bird of prey, the King James Version renders Perez as ossifrage, a name derived from Latin and meaning bone breaker. Others understand the Hebrew name to indicate a bird tearing its prey apart, and hence not necessarily denoting a breaker of bones. The osprey Poundian Halidiaris appears to be related to the hawk, but with certain distinct features, including feet with some similarity to those of the owl. The osprey's head and beak resemble those of the hawk, the body and wings are dark brown or bob and the underparts are white with streaks of brown. Measuring about 65 centimeters 26 inches in length, it has a wingspan of nearly 1.8 meters 6 feet. The osprey is found throughout the world, living near large bodies of water, where it feeds on fish that swim near the surface. The bird glides almost effortlessly above the water, wheeling gracefully and hovering until it locates its prey. Then it plunges swiftly downward, striking the water forcefully feet first, at times disappearing beneath the surface. It is admirably equipped for this type of attack, having dense compact plumage on its underparts to withstand some of the impact of hitting the water, and long, curved, very sharp claws that extend out from rough toes, enabling the bird to get a firm grip on its slippery prey. Observers say that in flying with the fish to shore to devour it, the osprey always grips the fish so that its head faces forward, thereby reducing air resistance. The osprey is fairly common on the coast and islands of southern Sinai. Other suggestions for the bird designated by the Hebrew Perez include the sea eagle Halidiaris albiacilla, distinct from the osprey, and the Lammergia barbatus, a vulture known to carry bones and tortoises to some height and then drop them on rocks in order to break them open. Ostrich heb. Bathhe middle.ya middle.ana. Rena middle.nim plural. The first of these Otextoe acute muritra longo. Ostrich 562 as a horse, mournful cry which has been likened to the roaring of a lion. The Smithsonian Series, 1944, Volume 9, p. 105. Compare Mic 1. 8. The ostrich Struthiocamelus is the largest living bird known, at times standing over 2 meters, 7 feet high at the crown of the head and weighing as much as 140 kilograms 300 pounds. The head is rather small and flat with very large eyes, the flexible neck is about 1 meter 3 feet long, and like the powerful legs, both head and neck are bare of feathers. The body plumage, however, is luxuriant, the long soft wing and tail plumes being much prized in ancient and modern times. The sleek black and white plumage of the male contrasts with the dull grayish-brown color of the female. The ostrich is unique among all birds in having but 2 toes on each foot, one of them equipped with a claw-like hoof that becomes a dangerous weapon when the bird is forced to defend itself. Its height and keen vision, however, usually enable it to spot its enemies from afar, and the huge bird then warily moves away. While the ostrich feeds mainly on vegetation, it is also carnivorous, including snakes, lizards, and even small birds in its indiscriminate diet. It is found among the list of unclean birds prohibited by the Mosaic Law. Law 11. 13, 16. The 14. 12, 15. Anciently known as the camel bird, the ostrich is able to endure for long periods without water and hence thrives in solitary wastelands. It is used in the Bible, along with jackals and similar creatures, as representative of desert life. Isla 43. 20 and to depict the ruinous desolation that became the fate of Edom and Babylon. Isla 13. 21. 34. 13. Job 50. 39. Job, rejected and detested, sitting among ashes, and mournfully crying out, considered himself like a brother to jackals and a companion to the daughters of the ostrich. Job 30. 29. Contrasted with stork. Jehovah God later drew Job's attention to the ostrich, and the things he pointed out strikingly illustrate some of the unusual features of that bird. Job 39. 13-18. In great contrast to the high-flying, majestically soaring storks with their broad powerful wings, the ostrich is flightless. Its wings are incapable of sustaining the bird's weight, and its flat breastbone lacks the keel that supports the flying muscles of birds of flight. The ostrich's plumes, though lovely, lack even the tiny hook-like filaments that cling together and give the feathers of flying birds the resistance to air that makes flight possible. Job 39. 13. Again in contrast to the stork, which builds its big nest firmly in the tops of trees. PS 104. 17. Buildings, or tall rocks, the ostrich merely scoops out a shallow depression in the ground surrounded by a low embankment. Here the female lays the eggs, weighing some 1.5 kilograms 3 pounds each, and since the ostrich is often polygamous unlike the stork, which is renowned for its fidelity to one mate, there may be a good number of eggs laid in the nest by the 2 or 3 hens. The male ostrich warms the nest eggs during the night and the hen incubates them by day, but she is known to leave the nest for periods during the day when the sun is hot. At such times the eggs, though very thick-shelled, are, nevertheless, vulnerable to damage or despoiling by animals or man. Job 39. 14, 15. Treat sons roughly. The statement that the ostrich does treat her sons roughly, as if not hers. Job 39. 16. In reference to ostriches as being cruel with respect to their offspring. La 4. 3. Have been objected to by some who claim that parent ostriches are quite solicitous in caring for their young. While it is true that the Hebrew term rena middle.nim used at Job 39. The 13th of may grammatically apply to either male or female ostriches, some lexicographers understand it to refer to the female birds. This would seem to be the case in view of the connection with the eggs laid, obviously, by the hen bird. When understood as applying to the female, Otextoe acute muritra longo oven 563 tends to run in a large curve, which permits its pursuers, if sufficient in number, to surround it. But on a straight course the ostrich's powerful legs enable it to laugh at the horse and at its rider. Job 39. 18. When running, its strides lengthen out to cover as much as 3.5 meters, 11 feet at a time, and its pace may reach as high as 70 kilometers hour, 44 miles per hour. The wings, useless for flight, nevertheless help to give balance to the bird's heavy body as it runs. The ostrich has certain characteristics that are said to stagger scientists, who tend to class the ostrich as among the lower or more primitive of living birds. It has a bladder collecting uric acid, an organ characteristic of mammals, but not possessed by any other family of birds. It also possesses eyelashes that protect its eyes from the blowing sun. Thus, though low in intelligence, the powerful, speedy ostrich gives credit to the wisdom of its creator. The Arabian ostrich Struthiocamelus syriacus, once abundant in Palestine and Arabia, is now extinct. Since 1973, a related African variety has been reintroduced into Israel. Avniatheni, shortened form of Avniel, son of Shemaiah and grandson of Karite Obed-Edom, appointed as a Levite gatekeeper before the sanctuary. Avni and his brothers were rulers of the house of their father. Capable, mighty men. 1 Ch 26. 1, 4, 6-8, 15. Avnielatheni middle.l. The first named judge of Israel after Joshua. Avniel was the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. JG 1. 13. 3. 9. Jos 15. 17. While this grammatical structure allows for either Avniel or Kenaz to be Caleb's younger brother, to harmonize with other texts Avniel must be viewed as Caleb's nephew, the son of Caleb's brother Kenaz. Thus certain translations read, Avniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother, Kenaz. But, more additionally, Caleb was the son of Jephunneh, hence not a son of Kenaz as was Avniel. New 32. 12. 1 Ch 4. 15. Avniel's marriage to Achsah, daughter of Caleb, came as a result of his victory over the Canaanite stronghold of Debir. Achsah's father Caleb had promised her to the conqueror of the city. Jos 15. 16-19. JG 1. 11-15. Avniel had a son named Hathath and established a permanent family in the tribe of Judah. Years later a descendant was chosen from this family to head a service group of 24,000 during David's reign. 1 Ch 4. 13. 27. 1, 15. Israel's first oppression by foreign kings due to disobedience lasted for 8 years. When they began to call to Jehovah for aid, he raised up Avniel to deliver them. With Jehovah's spirit upon him, Avniel defeated Cushan-Rishathaim, the king of Syria, and took general oversight and rendered judicial decisions among his brothers. JG 3. 8-11. Oven. A chamber that is heated in order to bake or to roast foods. Various types of ovens were used by the Hebrews and others. Picture, Volume 2, p. 952. Ovens of considerable size, consisting of a round hole in the ground, have been used in the Middle East up until modern times, some being as much as 1.5 or 1.8 meters, 5 or 6 feet deep and almost 1 meter, 3 feet in diameter. In an oven of this size, it was possible to roast an entire sheep by suspending it over the hot stones or coals. The bowl oven was used in biblical days and was probably similar to that employed by Palestinian peasants of modern times. A large clay bowl is placed inverted upon small stones on which the bread rests. The bowl is heated by the burning of fuel heat over and around it, and the bread is baked. Every Hebrew home likely had a portable jar oven, a type still used in Palestine. It was a large earthenware jar, about 0.9 meters, 3 feet high, having an opening at the top and widening toward the bottom. To heat it, fuel such as wood or grass was burned inside, the ashes being removed through a hole provided for that purpose. The top was closed, and when the jar was hot enough, dough was spread around the inside or otextoi acute muritra longo. Overseer 564 household ovens were common among the Israelites and Egyptians in the land of Egypt. Thus, during the second plague, frogs even came up into their ovens and then eating troughs. X8. 3. The tower of the bake ovens in Jerusalem was repaired under Nehemiah's direction during the restoration of the city's walls. NE 3. 11. 12. 38. This name's origin is uncertain, but it has been suggested that the tower was so named because commercial bakers had their ovens situated in that vicinity. Illustrative use. The oven is used in an expression denoting scarcity at Leviticus 26. 26, which reads,